Ken Roth, and he is the Executive Director of Human Rights Watch. Fantastic to have you on the News Hour. Explain to us, first of all, what exactly is happening to the Uyghurs in China and these claims of forced labor.
Well, I think that the world largely knows now that roughly 1 million Uyghur and other Turkic Muslims have been rounded up and put in detention centers, basically to force them to abandon their culture and to abandon Islam. Now, the government says, oh, this is not re-education. These are just so-called vocational training centers, which, frankly, is not true. But they have, under pressure, gradually been letting some of the Uyghurs and other Turkic Muslims leave, but then going into forced labor. And they are working in various factories and industries around China. What this coalition of rights groups has asked for is that companies sourcing products from China guarantee that their supply chain is not infected by this forced labor from Uyghur and other Turkic Muslims. And the truth of the matter is, on the one hand, that's the duty, the legal responsibility of these companies not to be complicit in forced labor. On the other hand, they have no idea because the Chinese government won't let independent inspectors in. In fact, UN human rights investigators have been pushing and pushing for access to Xinjiang to examine the serious allegations of detention and forced labor. And the Chinese government talks and talks and doesn't let them in.
Okay.
So in this absence, we have no idea. And there really is no way you can safely source from China without having to worry about this complicity in forced labor.
So it really does put these companies into quite a dilemma, for want of a better word, because your pressure campaign that you're part of with the other 80 brands, other organizations, says the fashion brands are complicit. Apple, for example, says they're investigating the claims, and so has Nike. So they're unaware and they're caught in this, as you say, situation to not be able to investigate. So what can they actually do?
Well, I think they really have two choices. Either they tell China that China has to really open up Xinjiang and allow independent inspectors in, including from the United Nations, which so far the Chinese government is refusing to do. Or these companies have to say, we cannot live up to our human rights obligations to ensure that we are not infected in our supply chains by this forced labor. So we're going to have to pull out. We're going to have to source our goods from someplace else. That's the basic dilemma. Now, I should say that the Turkish government has a very important role to play here. Turkey has been most outspoken, but still relatively silent with respect to this severe persecution of Muslims. And Turkey is really one of the leading Muslim majority nations of the world. It's been outspoken for, Palestinian Muslims, for Rohingya Muslims fleeing Myanmar. But, where is it on Xinjiang? And it would be very helpful if Turkey, rallying with other Muslim majority nations, were to tell China, this is utterly intolerable. How can you be forcing Muslims to abandon Islam? How can you be forcing Muslims to work?
And Ken, I really want to ask you about the timing. Why has this surfaced now? And could this important issue with regards to the Uyghurs in China, that we've been covering a lot here on TRT World, why has it surfaced now? And could it be actually lost in the bigger diplomatic spat with the US and China, the UK and China, Australia and China?
Well, I think it's important to separate the politics from the human rights. And I think the reason this is coming up now is, initially the focus was on the detention, on the forced indoctrination, the re-education camps. And that pressure did make a difference. China has released some people. Many are still detained. But those released, a significant number were simply put into forced labor. So this is the next evolution in the abuse. And if China thinks they can get away with forced labor while not allowing importing companies to examine their supply chain to ensure that that forced labor doesn't infect their supply chain, they're simply wrong. And that's why this large coalition of rights groups has said, okay, we're still concerned about the detention, but we're not going to let China play games with us and just move on to this problem of forced labor. They've got to open up the country to inspectors. Otherwise, no one can safely source from China.
Okay, and if they don't let the country open up to inspectors, brands can't really take action. What can consumers do? Very briefly.
Well, I think they have to tell brands that ignorance is no excuse. For a brand to say, oh, we investigated, we couldn't find anything out, that's not an answer because they don't get to go in. They don't get to do a real investigation. So consumers need to tell their brands, I don't want to buy a product that is the consequence of forced labor. I'm not going to live, I'm not going to have a cheaper product just because some Uyghur or Turkic Muslim was forced to make it. And I think if consumers put that kind of pressure on brands, the brands will be much quicker to ensure either free inspection, opening up Xinjiang, or they will pull out and find other supply chains.
Ken Roth, Executive Director of Human Rights Watch, thank you so much for speaking to us on the News Hour.